So we are on page 10a of Sanhedrin, but actually we're going back to page 1. Actually, there isn't a page 1. We're going back to page 2. It begins in page 2. There isn't a Daf Aleph. Did you ever notice that? It actually starts on page 2, Daf Bet. So we're going right back to the beginning, because if you are following in your hard paperback, real paper, Steinsaltz Gemarah, it's on page 50. That is where we're up to. I'll just share the screen with you. So for those of you that haven't got it, there we go. So we are up to over here with this little symbol here telling us this is a new subject. And what this quotation is, Makot Bishlosha, takes us right back to the Mishnah itself, the first Mishnah right at the beginning, which if you want to look at it, it's on page 7 of your book, your Steinsaltz book. And it's on the screen now. We started off the Mishnah, Dinei Mamonot Bishlosha, and we've just spent the last few weeks doing this bit here. Motzi Shem Rabba Esrim Shlosha, the Chachamim saying that the Motzi Shem Ra, here we are, Divrei Rabbi Meir was the one that said 3, Chachamim was the one that said 23. We've done that to death, haven't we, if you pardon the pun. We've absolutely bottomed out Motzi Shem Ra, and now we're going on to the next bit of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said like this, Makot Bishlosha. Cases concerning violation of prohibitions that render one liable to receive lashes are adjudicated by 3 judges. Mishum Rabbi Yishmael Amru, but they said in the name of Rabbi Yishmael, it doesn't say who they are, but it's presumably the Chachamim, quoting Rabbi Yishmael, and Rabbi Yishmael says it's 23 judges. So we've got a similar scenario to the one we had with the Motzi Shem Ra. With the Motzi Shem Ra, we had Rabbi Meir saying it was 3, and the Chachamim saying it was 23. Here we have the first opinion, which presumably is the Chachamim, because we're not told who it is, the Tanna Kama, say 3, and Rabbi Yishmael says 23. Now, we can probably predict, can't we, what the scenario is, because we know that 23 is the number of judges that we require for a capital case. We know that from the learning that we've done on the previous situation with the Motzi Shem Ra. So we're probably going to find that one lot of people say it might be a capital case and one might say it's not. We could probably predict that. But let's go and actually have a look. So let's go back to page 50. That's what we're going to be learning on. So there we go. Here we are. Makot Bishlosha Chule. See that Chaf Vav there? That's Hebrew for etc. Ve Chule. And so on, and the rest of it. So etc. So Makot Bishlosha, cases involving lashes are done by 3 judges, but Rabbi Yishmael says 23 judges. That's what we are talking about. Now, let's just first of all have a look and see why the Tanna Kama, the first opinion, says 3. Mina hane mile. That's a very common Gemara expression. Mina hane mile. That word mile, you will know. You will know what milim are. Okay. What is a milon? Anybody know what a milon is? Yes, Marcel's mouthing. It's a dictionary. Yes, it's a dictionary. And the word milah is a word. Okay, so mina hane mile. Mina hane is a combined word. From where do we find these words? Mina hane mile. Where is this? He translates it from. Where is this matter derived? Literally, from where are these words? Where do these words come from? In other words, how do we know it's three? What's the logic behind the statement that prohibitions that end up getting you lashes require three judges? So Rav Huna, Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, Amar Kra. Kra means the that which you read. It's come from the word kore, to read. Amar Kra, the pasuk, the Torah, the verse says, Ushfatum, Ushfatum, and they will be judged. They will be judged. And Shnayim, that means that's in the plural. That Shnayim, that's two. But Ein Beit Din Shakul, we can't have an even number of judges. Mosifim Aleim Od Echad, therefore we add one on, and there we've got three. What is this talking about? Where is this verse which we see this word? Well, we're told very clearly where it is. It's in Deuteronomy, Devarim, chapter 25, verses 1 and 2, which I just happen to have here ready for you. 1 second. There we go. Right, whenever you're ready, Leon, verse 1 and 2 of chapter 25 in Devarim.
When there will be a grievance between people, and they approach the court, and they judge them, and they vindicate the righteous one, and find the wicked one guilty. It will be that if the wicked one is liable to lashes, the judge shall cast him down and strike him before him, according to his wickedness, by account.
Okay. So the Gemara, Rav Huna, takes this word over here, ushfatum, and they judge them. How did you translate it again, Leon, please?
And they judge them, and they vindicate the righteous one, and find the wicked one guilty.
And just before that, ushfatum, they judge them.
And they judge them, yes.
Yeah, now, it's interesting because if you look on the screen, the Chabad translation has seen fit to put in brackets, and they, the judges, judge them. Why do you think that might be? Why did they see fit to put that in brackets, I wonder? What else could it mean? Who else is going to do the judging if not the judges? Any offers? No, I didn't think so. I don't really know either, except when we learn on the Gemarah in a few minutes, it might become clear why they think you should do that. Let's just go back to the Gemarah, but bear that in mind. Bear that little brackets there in mind. So what the Gemarah is saying, let's go back to the Gemarah. There we go. So what the Gemarah is saying is Rav Huna says, Ushfatum, and they, i.e. the judges, will judge them. And who are they? And there's a general rule which is applied in learning, that wherever there is a plural, without it stating specifically what number, then that is the minimum plural that it can be. So here, of course, the minimum plural number of judges you can have is 2, right? Otherwise, if it's less than 2, it's not judges, it's singular. So the minimum is 2. So Rav Huna says, the verse says, Ushfatum, and they shall judge them. Well, that must mean there must be 2 judges, because otherwise it would specify the number. It doesn't specify the number, and therefore it must be the smallest number of judges in the plural, which is 2.
Then goes on to say the judge should whip him, should do the administer the lashes. The judge.
Okay, so that's fine.
Is that the missing one?
That's good. No, we'll come back to that in a sec, Johnny, but that's fine to point that out. Let's just carry on a sec. So 2 judges minimum, but we have another concept, don't we? Ein beit din shakul. We can't have an even number of judges on a bet din, because then we can't get a verdict. Remember, we spoke about this some months ago when we learned the earlier part of the Gemara. So what do? Mosifin, same word as musaf. Mosifin alehem, they add on to them od echad, 1 more. Harekan losha. Therefore, you have your 3 judges. That is Rav Huna's explanation as to why we need 3 judges for lashes, because the verse says, with lashes, they shall judge them. Must be 2 judges at least. And we can't have 2 judges because it's an even number, so we'll make it 3. Now, let's just go back to the verse then, shall we, and have a look and see what Johnny's pointing out. Bit fiddly, all this changing around the share, but never mind. Okay, so what does it say? There's a ushvatum, and they shall judge them. V'hitzdiku et atzadik, they shall acquit the innocent one. V'hirshiu et harasha, and they shall condemn the guilty one. And then Johnny points out, the next verse says, Leon,
40 shall he strike him. He shall not add, lest he strike him an additional blow beyond these, and your brother will be degraded in your eyes.
Okay, so there it's in the singular. Do the verse before for us, verse 2.
It will be that if the wicked one is liable to lashes, the judge shall cast him down and strike him before him according to his wickedness by account.
So Johnny points out that here it's in the singular. 1 judge is doing the lashes. More than 1 judge make the decision. That's in verse 1, and they shall judge them. But only 1 carries out the punishment. So that's fine. That's not a problem. You wouldn't have more than 1 person doing the actual carrying out the punishment. But the verdict is decided in verse 1 there by a plural number of judges. Okay, so let's go back again to the Gemarah. Right, now then, so Rav Huna says must be 3 because of the plural over here. The Gemara questions Rav Huna and says, hang on a minute, we've got some more plurals in this verse, haven't we? Ella me'ata. Well, he says, if you're going to say that they shall judge them means that you've got 2 judges, well, what about the hitzdiku and you shall acquit the innocent, or they shall acquit the innocent? That's also plural. So that's another 2. V'hirshiu, and you shall condemn the guilty. Remember the pasuk. That's another 2. Shnayim. Therefore, we should have 7 judges, because we've got 3 lots of 2. 2 for ushvatum, you shall judge them. 2 for hitzdiku, you shall acquit them. And 2 for hirshiu, you shall condemn them. That's 6. We can't have an even number of judges. So we add 1 on. Hare kan shiva. We should have 7 judges. So Rav Huna says, what are you going to do about that, Rav Huna? You're not consistent. you're just pulled out two for one plural. What about the others? What are you going to say about that? And we're going to see that in a minute. Yes, Leon.
There seems to me to be a problem here. We're talking about one man having a dispute with another man. And then you're talking about a verdict from the judges and lashes being applied. Well, I thought this sounds to me more now like a criminal matter. How can a punishment be imposed by a civil court?
Who says it's a civil court? You started off by saying here you've got one man in a case against another man. Who says that?
That is a civil action by modern standards.
Yeah,
by
but who says that's what we're talking about? Why did you assume that's what we were talking about?
Because it's not a prosecution against one man, it's one man against another man.
Where does it tell you that?
The first verse of chapter 25.
Okay, let's go back to it.
In Devarim, where there will be a grievance between people.
Hang on, let me go back to it. Have you got it on the screen there?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. If there's a quarrel between men and they approach the tribunal and they judge them and they acquit the innocent one and condemn the guilty one, and it shall be, if the guilty one has incurred the penalty of lashes, that the judge shall make him lean over and flog him in front of him, commensurate with his crime in number. Okay, so what you're saying is this is a civil case in the number one, and number two, it's not a civil case. Well, why should that necessarily be a civil case? It might be a criminal case that Reuven hit Shimon, struck him.
Well, then there would be a different. There would be a prosecutor.
Only in your experience of the English courts.
Yes.
Here, remember, there is a situation where we don't have an adversarial system whereby you have an advocate on either side and a judge. We have more of an inquisitorial system like they have on the continent, where the judge or the judges are investigating the case. So
the Mishnah says, Johnny, Rabbi Shansel says, cases concerning one who is accused of violating a prohibition. What does that mean?
Yeah, because normally, if you any lo ta'aseh, so any halacha that is a negative commandment, so you shall not do X, Y, or Z. If the punishment is not specified, so for example, you shall not desecrate the Shabbat. Well, we know that the punishment for that is the death sentence, right? Because it says so. But anything where there is no punishment mentioned, then the automatic punishment is lashes for a negative commandment. I've put on the screen here the Rashi for that potter. You might not be able to see it because it's a bit small. So I'll just read what it says. Since the next verse continues, the judge shall flog him, one might think all those convicted by the court must be flogged. Therefore, scripture teaches us, and it shall be if the guilty one has incurred the penalty of lashes. From here we see that sometimes a convicted party is given lashes and sometimes he is not. Who receives lashes is derived from the context as follows. some negative commandments are mitigated by positive commandments which relate to the same matter. For example, the law of sending away the mother bird. Okay, so the pasuk says, you shall not take the mother upon the young. In other words, that's a negative commandment. Do not take the mother bird that's sitting on her fledglings or on her eggs. And then immediately the pasuk goes to say the positive commandment, you shall send away the mother. So the negative commandment is don't take the eggs while the mother is there. And the positive commandment is send the mother away. Here, in that situation, the negative commandment is mitigated by the positive commandment. If someone transgressed the negative commandment and took the mother bird from upon her young, he can then clear himself of the punishment by fulfilling the positive commandment of sending the mother bird away from the nest. This is an example of a negative commandment mitigated by a positive commandment, right? Now, in our context, immediately after describing the procedure of flogging, the next verse continues with the negative commandment of you shall not muzzle an ox when it's threshing the grain, which is a negative commandment that is not mitigated by a positive one. Therefore, from the context, we learn that only for transgressing a negative commandment, which you cannot undo by a positive commandment, then you get lashes. So Rashi is telling us is telling us that the lashes punishment is given out for transgression of negative commandments that A, don't have any other punishment specified, and B, can't be mitigated or undone by a positive commandment. So like the example that we've just given. So does that answer our question? Go on, Leon.
I've just seen a note in chapter 25, a note at the bottom which says this passage cannot be understood literally because it implies that lashes result from a dispute between two people, but this is not the case, for the loser of a civil dispute does not receive lashes. And it says that in Makos,
right,
page 13b.
Yeah, if you look at the Rashi there, right at the bottom of the Rashi, it says see Makot 13b.
Yes.
So maybe we should go and have a look at that. We'll have a look at that in a minute, maybe. But so your question there, Leon, is a valid question. And I think that what we have to say is that this can't be a civil case, which is why I asked you in the first place, why do you think it's a civil case? And you gave me a very good answer. You think it's a civil case because it says so, if there is a quarrel between men. Now, what's interesting is how a person's mind process works. Because without realizing it, I had worked backwards. Because without actually realizing my own thought process, I have said in my mind, well, it's lashes we're talking about, and therefore it can't possibly be a civil case. So I've come at it from a completely opposite way, because I know that lashes can't come from a civil case. So I've said to you, how do you know it's a civil case? It can't be a civil case because of the punishment. Now, you've asked the question, and I've answered the question because I know the answer already. Do you know what I mean? But the question remains. We have to then understand what it means, ki yiyeh riv bein anashim, if there is a quarrel between men and they approach the tribunal. It can't be a civil case, as you say, so it must be a case that has a criminal element to it. And that's why I said perhaps it's a case of Reuven striking Shimon, or one of those kind of commandments that you shouldn't do. Or maybe it's hating him in his heart or something like that, which is a negative commandment. Which could still be a quarrel. But there must be some kind of negative commandment involved Otherwise, there wouldn't be lashes. So in other words, your question is a very valid question. And the answer is that it can't mean what we think it means on that first line, which I suppose is what your footnote in the art scroll has said. Really?
Johnny.
Yes, David, we can't see you.
Okay, you can. You should be able to now.
Yes, we can see you now.
I've just got in front of me the Ramban on that pasuk, who asks exactly the same question as Leon. So Leon is in very good company here.
I would say the Ramban's in very good company.
Sorry, I stand corrected. And the Ramban's answer is similar to yours, Johnny, that it is a civil case between two litigants. One of the examples he gives is your example, where he's caused bodily harm to his neighbor, and the value of the damage is less than a pruta, and therefore he'd be liable for malchus as well as, or instead of restoration, because it doesn't have a value on it. Or another example he gives is in a dispute between two people, where one of the persons says Shem Hashem, and curses with Shem Hashem, which would make him liable for malchus.
Ah, that's interesting. So the first answer of the Ramban is the answer that I gave. And the second answer of the Ramban is very interesting, because what the second answer is a case where it ends up that although it starts as a civil case, Reuven comes along and says, Shimon cursed me. And it has a criminal element to it, because Shimon, in cursing Reuven, uses the Shem Hashem, which is not allowed. That's a negative commandment. You shall not take the name of Hashem in vain. I'll come to you in one sec, Julia. So this is a little bit, I suppose, I don't know, I'm speaking just off the top of my head now. Tell me if this makes sense. This, I suppose, is a similar case whereby you might have, let's say, a libel case. And in the course of that libel case, it's found that somebody commits perjury. So it starts off as a civil case of libel, and then it ends up with an additional criminal case of perjury. And the reason that sprang to mind is that I'm currently, whilst I'm doing my running in the morning, listening to a Jeffrey Archer novel. Hamein Vin Yovin, you'll all know the story with Jeffrey Archer, who did bring a libel case and then ended up in prison for perjury. That's a similar sort of thing to what the Ramban's second answer is there, is that it started off as a civil case, one person cursing another, but because he used the name of Hashem, which is a criminal Torah offense, it's got a criminal element to it. So yes, the Ramban is in very good company. He gets Leon's question and my answer. He's clever, this Ramban, isn't he? Yes, Julia.
I was just wondering how it's ever possible to bring a criminal case, because there were no police, there's no prosecution. So surely all cases with a criminal element are brought by one individual claiming that another individual has breached halakha or commandments.
I'm not sure that's entirely accurate. We will be reading in a few weeks' time Parashat Shoftim, which begins with the famous words Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha b'chol sho'arecha. Judges and officers. Shotrim is the same word that we use in modern Hebrew. What is a policeman in Hebrew? Modern Hebrew? Mishtara is the police force. A policeman is a shoter. And what is more than one policeman? Shotrim. Exactly the same word. So the Torah tells us that we do have policemen. Now, how it actually worked, whether there was an office of the director of public prosecutions who decided what went before the judges, I don't know. Maybe in Sanhedrin we will learn how that worked later on. But you're probably right, Julia. But in certain ways, that's not dissimilar to what happens today. Somebody will report something to the police, and then eventually somebody will make a decision as to whether it comes to court. But it's not correct to say that there weren't policemen, because we have a positive commandment to appoint policemen to every city. Yes, Howard.
Oh, no question of defunding the police in Israel, then. That's very good. Johnny,
No,
your answer was
not.
even cleverer than you might have realised, because there's such a thing as criminal libel. It was abolished in England and Wales in 2010, but in many, so until then, it existed in England and Wales, and it still exists in many other jurisdictions. So it's a pretty good answer you gave.
Oh, that's good. How did criminal libel differ from regular libel?
Well, plainly, if it was serious enough, it would amount to a criminal act that could be prosecuted.
So it's an issue of degree then.
Yes, but Parliament, in its wisdom, decided it was antiquated, and it went along with sedition and maybe even treason or hanging for treason. A few things were tidied up at the same time.
Very interesting. Thank you for that little nugget. Okay, so we have now spanned 1,000 years. Well, I suppose we spanned 3,500 years really, because we've looked at a pasuk in the Torah. We've looked at the Ramban's answer. Ramban lived in the 12th century. And we have had Leon's question, my answer, and Howard's little legal nugget. So I think that's pretty impressive, really. Let's carry on. Let's go back to the Gemarah. Let's go off the verses there, and let's go back to the Gemarah. Okay, one sec. There we go. Right. So, oh, I've lost it.
Off the beaten track.
Yes. Well, that's the way we do things, isn't it?
Because of the lashes, I meant.
We are proper Gemarah learners, because we go off all sorts of tangents and eventually get dragged back. So,
I meant beaten in the form of lashes, Johnny.
Sorry?
Beaten in the form of lashes.
Lashes, absolutely, yes. So, Rav Huna said it was 3, and the Gemarah says, well, you're not logical, Rav Huna. If you're going to say 2 for they judged, then you need 2 for they acquit and 2 for they condemn. So it should be 7, Harikan Shiva. So what does Rav Huna say? Rav Huna will answer the answer given by our old friend Ulla. Remember, Ulla got involved in our previous piece of Gemarah. He was the one that talked about gossip, remember? Why we might need 23 because of gossip. Well, he's getting involved here again. Hahu mi ba'ilei kita Ulla. Says Rav Huna, no. That's not the case. We don't say 2 for they judge, 2 for they acquit, and 2 for they condemn. You need to know, by the way, a little principle here, that when you make a drasha from something in the Torah, you can only make one drasha from one section. So you can't say that this word v'hitzdiku, you can learn 2 judges and something else. You can only learn one thing from a drasha on a word. So Ulla says you can't use hitzdiku and hirshi'u to teach you that you need 2, because I need those words to teach me something else. And once I've learned something else from them, I can't then learn 2 judges from them. What is it that I want those words for? What do I want to learn out, as we say, from those 2 words? Well, here it is. The Amar Ulla. Ulla says, Remez. What is Remez, apart from a street in the middle of Netanya where the Misrad Apnim is?
A hint, a clue.
A clue or a hint, correct. Remez le'edim zomamin min haTorah minayin. Ulla asks a question. He says, you know what edim zomamin are by now? Edim zomamin are those witnesses who show that the first lot of witnesses were not telling the truth. Edim zomamin are witnesses who conspire, where there's a second set of witnesses that come and say, you can't have been at such a place at such a time witnessing such a crime because you were with us in the pub at that time watching the footy. So you could not have been anywhere else. So where is there a clue, says Ulla? Where is there an allusion, as Rav Steinsaltz translates, to the concept of these conspiring witnesses? Where do we find in the Torah a clue? And so the Gemara says, hang on a minute. Remez le'edim zomamin. Why do we need a clue for edim zomamin? V'haktiv. Have we not got an explicit verse in the Torah that teaches about edim zomamin? And there it is in Deuteronomy 19:19. Let's have a look at what that says. There we go. Chapter 19 of Dvarim, in that same parsha that we mentioned just before, Parshat Shoftim. Here it says, let's go from verse 18 onwards, Leon. You're muted. Leon, you're muted.
The judges shall inquire thoroughly, and behold, the testimony was false testimony. He spoke up falsely against his fellow. You shall do to him as he conspired to do to his fellow, and you shall destroy the evil from your midst. Okay, look at the Hebrew words there. Va'asitem lo kasher zamam la'asot la'achiv. You shall do to him as he plotted, as he conspired to do to his brother. So there you are. The Torah tells us explicitly that there's such a concept as edim zomamim, conspiring witnesses. So the Gemara says, why, Ulla, are you asking for a verse to hint at conspiring witnesses when we've got an explicit verse for that? You don't need a hint when you've got an explicit verse. That's silly. Just go to this verse. Why are you giving us, trying to dray out and say you need a verse to give you a hint to something that you have explicitly spoken about? So let's go and see what Ulla's answer is. Go back to the Gemara. We're flipping back and forth between the screens here. I'm sorry about the delay each time, but that's just the way the system works. So, remez le'edim zomamin, question mark. What on earth do we need that for? A clue. Have we not got an explicit pasuk? Kasher zamam. We've just quoted it. Says Ulla, Ella rather, remez le'edim zomamim shalokin minayin. He says, I need a clue, I need a hint to the concept of conspiring witnesses who get lashes. And this is where I get it from. Dichtiv, I use our pasuk, v'hitzdiku et tzaddik v'hirshu et rasha. I'm using this pasuk to tell me that such a thing exists. Edim zomamin, this idea of conspiring witnesses exists even where it could cause lashes. Now, what's he going on about here? What's the normal situation with
conspiring witnesses. The verse just told us. I'm not going to flip back again because I can't be bothered. But read it out for us again, Leon, please. Those two psukim from Deuteronomy, Dvarim 19 in Parashat Shoftim, verses 18 and 19.
The judges shall inquire thoroughly, and behold, the testimony was false. Was false testimony. He spoke up falsely against his fellow. You shall do to him as he conspired to do to his fellow, and you shall destroy the evil from your midst.
Right. So this explicit pasuk tells us that Eidim Zomimim only exist, or at least we only know about them, in cases where you can do to him what he tried to do to you. So in other words, you tried to get money. Remember, let's go back to our case of the Motzi Shemra. Our conspiring witnesses tried to ruin the ketubah of this girl, or tried to get the 100 pieces of silver for the girl's father by conspiring, and it's found out that they were Eidim Zomimim. They would have to pay the what they tried to extract from the other person, right? Somebody comes along and says that they had witnesses that they'd committed adultery. They tried to get her to be put to death. Then that's what they got. But what about lashes? Lashes only come when there is no other punishment mentioned. Yes, Howard. You're muted.
Sorry, what if there's
We can't
what if
hear
there
you.
is no conspiracy which involves two or more, but just somebody giving false testimony? Somebody alone giving, not conspiring, kesher, just one person giving false testimony.
One person giving false testimony is not Eidim Zomimim.
No, but I mean,
It's got to be in the plural. It's got to be two, because only two can conspire together.
correct.
So just,
I
say inverted commas, just giving false testimony is just going against the 10 Commandments.
Is there a part of the Gemarah that deals with that?
It's quite straightforward. You know, you give false testimony that you've broken the 10 Commandments, in the same way as you have broken the 10 Commandments if you steal or commit adultery or kill or don't honor your parents or covet. So
is it implicit that you will have to give the same recompense as where there's a conspiracy?
No, you don't.
Weird.
It's only, you only get done to you what you tried to do to others if you are conspiring as a pair of witnesses. It's the conspiracy bit rather than the false testimony that gets you into that scenario. False testimony is bad enough because you've committed a big avera, but conspiring with somebody else, it's even more premeditated, because your one person testimony on your own can't do anything. You have to join with somebody else to make a pair of witnesses to cause the big problem.
Thank you.
Johnny,
there's a paragraph on the left by Rabbi Steinsaltz, if you want to look at it, about the Zomimim.
Over here, okay. Right. An allusion to the halacha that conspiring witnesses are flogged. This is what the Ullah is trying to tell us. In some instances, witnesses testify that a certain defendant is liable for a transgression whose punishment is not execution, corporal punishment, or monetary payment. Examples include testimony that a certain priest should be disqualified, or that someone murdered another accidentally. So, for example, somebody who murders somebody accidentally, what happens to him?
Goes to Ir Miklot.
He goes to the Arei Miklot, correct. He runs off to one of the cities of refuge. So you're going to say, well, the Eidim Zomimim should be stuck in the cities of refuge then. And what happens to a priest who's disqualified? Nothing. That's the point. He doesn't get any of the matnat kahuna. He can't get, he can't, in our day, he can't duchen. He can't go to the service in the Beit HaMikdash, which means he can't eat the korbanot. So he's lost his living. But it's not a specific punishment that he would get. It's not a punishment that he can't get the money. And the going to the Arei Miklat is not a punishment. That is just an option that he has to avoid retribution. So you can't say that the Eidim Zomimim have wanted to cause him a punishment. So these Eidim Zomimim, these conspiring witnesses in the case here that Rabbi Steinsaltz is mentioning, right? They haven't actually caused a punishment. So how can they get done to them what they wanted to do to others? So here Ulla says, we need a hint to what we do to them. And this is the hint that I'm using this pasuk for. Rather, they're subject to lashes for having offered false testimony. There's the answer to your question, Howard. False testimony is in the category of any other negative transgression that doesn't have a specified punishment, and therefore they get lashes. Okay? And Ulla is using our verse of the vihitstiku, the condemning and the acquitting to teach us that. And if he's using it to teach us that, then he can't use it to teach us the two business. And so therefore he's still only left with two from the word ushfatum, and they shall judge. We can't have two, we can only have an odd number. So we add one to the two, and that is Ulla's explanation. So if we go back to the Gemarah, what have you got on the screen? Have you got the Gemarah on the screen? You have, I think, haven't you? Yeah.
So just going back to the beginning, the translation from the Chumash, what Leon read out said they mentioned the tribunal, and then they put in brackets the judges. Why you didn't tell us why did it?
No, we're not come to it yet. It's the next bit.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's coming up
tribunal,
now.
Which means three.
Yeah, it's going in now.
Okay.
So therefore, Ulla says, we're over here now in the Gemarah. Remez le'edin zomim min haTorah minai. The Gemarah says we don't need a hint for regular conspiring witnesses because we've got an explicit pasuk for that. Ulla says no. I'm talking about the case of Eidim Zomimim who get lashes. That's what we're talking about. And so the Gemarah then explains Mishum de, because Mishum she is a modern Hebrew expression as well. Mishum dehitstiku et hatzadik v'hirshiu et harasha. Because the verse says they shall acquit the innocent and condemn the evil or the wicked. And then the next pasuk says, "V'haya im bin hakot harasha." If that rasha that we were talking about is somebody who is a bin hakot. What's a bin hakot? It's from the same word as ben hakot. Somebody who is due lashes. Okay. Then. Witnesses that cause the innocent to be made guilty, they are the ones that get the lashes. So when the pasuk says hitzdiku et hatzadik v'hirshiu et harasha, they're talking about the second set of witnesses, not the judges. The judges do the judging, but this verse where it says they acquit the innocent and they condemn the guilty is not talking about the judges. They don't do the acquitting. The acquitting, although they technically do, the acquitting comes via the second set of witnesses that say that the first set of witnesses were conspiring. So the Gemarah explains that we can't bring in the two business for Hitzdiku and Hirshiu because it's not referring to the judges. Only the word Ushfatum, and they will judge, is referring to the judges. So if we go back to the Chabad translation of Dvarim, and I show you that again on the screen, that's why they put the judges in brackets here to tell us that the plural here is the only one, according to the Gemarah, that's referring to the judges. The judges judge, but when it says they acquit the innocent and they condemn the guilty, there, according to the Gemarah, is talking about the witnesses that come along and trash the first set of witnesses. They are the vehicle through which the condemnation of the guilty happens and the acquitting of the innocent happens. So, says the Gemarah, that can't be used as a plural for judges because it's not even referring to the judges, it's referring to the witnesses. And so therefore, we've only got one set of plurals, which is ushpatum, they shall judge. One set of plural means two. We can't have two, so we add an extra one and we get three. That's
the translation of mishpat then, because the ArtScroll translates it as tribunal. Tribunal. Yeah.
I'm gone. Let's go back to the screen again. El HaMishpat. El HaMishpat means to the court. To the court.
They call it the tribunal, which is three.
Yeah, I suppose tribunal.
That's what I meant.
Okay, let's ask the lawyers. We've got three lawyers with us today. The word tribunal presumably started off life because there were three judges, as in tri. Does a tribunal always have three judges?
I don't think that the shoresh of tribunal is tri necessarily.
You don't think so?
Not necessarily. I don't know. Maybe the Roman tribune was three. I don't know. I can stand corrected. But I don't think mishpat means the place, the house where you'll get a sentence at the end of the proceedings.
Correct.
And I don't think tribunal implies three. Let's see what Julia and Leon think.
What do you think, Leon? Tribunal, the origin of the word comes from tri, three.
It has never occurred to me that tri means three. Like the word tribute, if you pay a tribute to somebody, I don't think that means three either.
Okay,
it's never occurred to me. There you are.
Julia, you agree? Okay, so there we have it, Johnny. Tribunal comes from the word tribute as opposed to the concept of tri. It hadn't occurred to me either. Once you said it, I thought that was rather clever, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah, mishpat means the court.
Can I say that the Latin tribunus was the title of various elected officials in ancient Rome? I don't think there's any tri about it. In fact, I'm not even sure that tri doesn't come from Greek rather than Latin. I haven't checked.
Okay. Unos, duos, treos. So there we go. Anyway, that was a good point, that, Johnny. Good try. Right.
A trident is a three-pronged spear in ancient Greece.
There we go. So tri definitely does have a three, but this comes from tribunus. Very good. Well, we've learned.
No. Tribunus is not three. It's several.
No. But
sorry, did I mishear you? Sorry.
No, it says it's a raised platform. The etymology says that tribunal, it's a raised platform. That's what it is.
You can have a tribunal in an arbitration with one or three or several or other numbers of those sitting in judgment in that process. It's not
Jeffrey?
necessarily 3.
Jeffrey, on mute.
Arbitration, not necessarily 3. Could be 5. Could be 1.
No. I just agree with Howard. I think tribunal is definitely 3. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called tribe.
No,
No, that's the point.
Explain it to you.
What we're saying, Jeffrey, is that it doesn't come from the word tri, it comes from the word tribunus, which means a tribute.
Several.
But I agree. I think that there could well be a 3, and I wonder whether
No, it's not. It can't be a tribute if you're going to be tried.
No,
it's the other way.
It says in the online etymology dictionary, it's early 15th century, a judgment seat from the Old French tribunal, justice seat, judgment seat, and directly from Latin tribunal, platform for the seat of magistrates, elevation, embankment, from tribunus, official in ancient Rome, magistrate, literally head of a tribe. Hence, a court of justice, it's not related to trio or...
There we go. The origin is from tribe, okay? From tribe. It's the head of the tribe rather than tribe without the B. Very interesting. There we go. Who says Gemarah is boring? We really do manage to have a range of subjects in our Gemarah share. Let's just go back to the Gemarah and try and find a sensible place to stop because I think we're just in the middle of something. Let's just try and finish this particular bit. Let's go back to the Gemarah. Right, so we have said that we're using this verse to teach us that Adim Zomamim, who don't get anything else, can get lashes. And we're using the juxtaposition of the next verse about the lashes to teach us that. And therefore, if we are using those, then we can't use it for anything else. Okay. And then we'll just carry on this bit because we're going to just finish this off. V'tepuk milo ta'aneh. So you're going to ask the question that I asked myself. Why do we need a hint for that? We have a specific halakha, which we've even mentioned today. You shall not bear false witness. Okay, it's in Shemot 20:13, and I happen to have that ready for you as well. So there it is on your screen now. It's in the 10 Commandments. Okay, Lo tirtzah, you shall not murder. Lo tinaf, you shall not commit adultery. Lo tignov, you shall not steal. Lo ta'aneh bereacha eid shaker. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. We have a specific halakha against that. So it's the same question we asked before. Why do we need a hint for something that we've got an explicit halakha for? We asked the question before to do with Adim Zomamim, and now we're asking the question to do with the bearing of false testimony itself. So the Gemarah says, why do we need to have a separate derivation for this? And says the Gemarah, Mishum dahavale lav she'ein bo ma'aseh, v'chol lav she'ein bo ma'aseh ein lokin alav. Because there is a principle, says the Gemarah, there is a principle that a prohibition that does not involve actually doing something, an actual physical act, but only speech, as opposed to an action, you don't get lashes for it. Let's have a look what Rav Steinsaltz says over here on the right-hand side. When somebody is found to be in violation of a prohibition that does not involve a specific action, he is not subjected to lashes, although there are a few exceptions. So, for example, the last of the 10 commandments, you shall not covet. But what if you do covet? Do you get lashes for that? No. Okay. The exceptions are taking a false oath, assigning a substitute for an animal already designated as an offering, and cursing another with the name of God. We mentioned that earlier on. So generally speaking, the idea of a flogging for a lo ta'aseh, for a prohibition, can be learned out from that halacha. Lo ta'aneh, we've got a prohibition. But don't give false witness is something that doesn't involve an action. It's speech only. And because we have the principle that generally speaking, something that doesn't involve an action doesn't get you lashes, Ullah says, my verse, Hitzdiku et tzaddik v'hirshiu et rasha, my verse comes to hint to us that if you give false testimony, you can still get lashes, even though it doesn't involve an action. Yes, Howard.
I don't know if this is entirely relevant, but it's interesting to note that speech only, as you called it, in other words, slander, is not as serious in English law as libel, which is written or broadcast, if you like, or if you like, spoken in court and therefore published. It's just inherent in English law that libel is actionable per se, but for slander you need to prove loss.
Interesting. Okay, that would fit a bit, wouldn't it? Really
interesting.
Yes. Okay. So what have we done so far in our scenario? We started off by saying there was a dispute between the first opinion that said cases that result in flogging need 3 judges, and we went back to the Mishnah to find out that Rebbe Yishmael said it was 23, and that was the machloket. So far, we've only gone through the reasoning why the first opinion, the Tanakama, as we call it, says 3. We said that it comes from using a plural of they shall judge. A plural is 2. You can't have 2, so you've got to have an odd number. So you add 1, that's 3. We then said, well, what about the other plurals? That should be 7, because there are 3 lots of 2 plurals. And then Ullah helped us out and said, no, that's a hint to Eidim Zomamim. And then we said, well, hang on a minute, why do you need a hint? We've got an explicit verse for that. And then Ullah wheedles his way out of that and says, no, that's that explicit one is only where they don't get, where they can get the punishment that they wanted the other person to get. Here, it's a case where they get lashes, where there's no punishment for the other person, like we said, where a Cohen or not being disqualified or something. And then the Gemarah said, well, we don't need that either, because we've got an explicit law that says don't bear false witness. And then we said, no, that only applies. You need our hint, because lashes, generally speaking, only applies when it involves an action and not merely speech. What you can see next, which we'll do next week, please God, is we're going to see what Rabbi Yishmael's reasoning is for saying it's 23. Now, if you don't want a spoiler, don't read on. We're going to have a look and see what Rabbi Yishmael's logic is as to why he says we need 23 judges for a case of lashes. And then after we've done that, we can then go back and see which of those opinions actually is the normative halacha. How do we paskin the halacha? Is it 3 or is it 23? But first of all, we need to know what Rabbi Yishmael's logic is, and we will do that next week, please God. Any questions on today's offering?
No.
Good. Okay. Tisha B'Av on Motzei Shabbat. The Rav tonight will give his shiur, at which he will go through the various things you need to remember, because Tisha B'Av starting on Motzei Shabbat's a bit complicated. So listen up for that. I'll try and send out a written guide if I can before Shabbat. So you've got that as a handy aid memoir. David Altman, who many of you will know from our Tiyulim, is going to give a talk after Megillat Eicha on Motzei Shabbat. He's going to give a talk on the destruction of the temple in Roman times from a historical perspective. And that will be in Hebrew and English. It will be done in the style of his Tiyulim, where he gives it in both languages. So I recommend that after Megillat Eicha. That will be in Shul. And then at 6 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, which is Tisha B'Av, first of all, davening, there'll be a first minyan at 6 for the insomniacs, and then at 8 for the normal people, and we'll do kinot, selection of them at least. And then at 6 o'clock, an hour before mincha, there will be a shiur in Hebrew from the Rav and from me in English in Shul, and I'll try and do a Zoom it as well, so that we can see if that works. And then mincha at 7, and the fast finishes at 8:15 or something like that, 8:10. I'm not quite sure exactly, but I'll send out something or other with a timetable. Okay, any questions on all of that?
On Shabbat afternoon, Johnny, you won't be speaking, I presume.
Yes, Shabbat afternoon, I'm going to talk about Megillat Eicha, the structure of Megillat Eicha between Mincha and Mariv.
So when do we eat?
You eat before Mincha.
Before Mincha, okay, thank you.
Yeah, but I'll send that will be part of what the Rav will go through
yeah,
tonight.
Thank you.